Welcome to the Tarot Coven cast. Real people, real talk, real magic. Hello out there, lovely listeners, and welcome to another bonus episode of the Tarot Coven podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jasmine.
I'm Jackanovia.
And I'm Jessie.
And this time on the show, we're here to talk all about another Wheel of the Year celebration. It's the third and final Harvest Festival, and for some, it's the Witch's New Year. We're here to lift the veil on Samhain. As always with these bonus episodes, we're going to talk about what this day means and how you can celebrate it. Plus, because this is Samhain, we'll be sharing some spooky stories and some tips on protection magics. But let's get started with some basics. So Samhain begins technically kind of on the 31st of October, known as Samhain Eve. And then Samhain itself is on November 1st. But let's be honest, as soon as it started getting chilly here in the Northern Hemisphere, we've all been awaiting Samhain. I feel like the first time I stepped on a crunchy leaf, I was like, okay, Samhain is here. That's it.
I was sipping pumpkin spice in August. Mm-hmm. I'm not even going to lie about it.
I know. I feel like of the four of us, you were definitely the most excited, and you were the most unabashedly excited as well.
Oh, wait, I'm not sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Yeah, so those are the dates. And then if we're kind of connecting it with moon phases and astrology, we've got the waning crescent moon, which is kind of a time of surrender and reflection, rest and retreat. It's the end of a cycle, completion, you're leaving, and it's kind of, we're settling into a bit of like dormancy. We're going into the dead season in a way. And of course, it's Scorpio season, the best. And then let's talk about like some alternative names for Samhain. And Jackanovia, if you want to hop in with this, that would be great. And then I also have a follow-up question about this Witch's New Year thing. So you want to tell us about some alternative names for this holiday?
Yeah, like there's Samhain, of course, is the ritual. And I mean, that's old. That's like ancient. And it became Halloween or Hallowmass. And then there was also the Christian is All Saints Night. And then All Saints Day is November 1st, I think.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
But yeah, something to that effect. So what they did, they kind of adopted it because it was, respecting your ancestors, and that veil between the worlds is thin. So, I mean, they took that into their own tradition too. So, yeah, it's kind of a mishmash of everything and became Halloween.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like we should talk more throughout the episode of kind of like the evolution of Samhain to Halloween, because there's still so many echoes, right, between the two.
Yes.
Okay, so now I have a question for you about, I mentioned in sort of the intro that for some people, or maybe for some witches, they consider this their new year. And I'm really intrigued by this. And I wonder whether or not you sort of live by that, because I'm thinking of giving it a go. Usually I go by my birthday as kind of my own personal new year, which is really just 10 days after like Samhain, Halloween. Humble brag, I was meant to be born on Halloween, and then I was fashionably late to the party we call life. So, oh well. But anyway, so I was thinking, yeah, maybe I'll just like do maybe kind of a Yule thing where I'll just celebrate for the 10 days and it'll be like my little New Year ritual. But I don't know. I wanted to hear your take on that.
I love that idea. That's so cool. I've actually, for a few years, I've done my own personal Wheel of the Year, and I based it off my birthday. So I actually counted how many days are between each of the celebrations. And then so my personal Yule would be my birthday and then ongoing.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really insightful. If you sit with it and read it over and really contemplate, you get a lot from it. So highly recommend that. As far as Samhain being the new year, it's weird. I do celebrate it that way, but then some people might say, no, I don't. So Samhain to me is death. So that is the death of the year. So technically, yes, it's the end of the year. But between Samhain and Yule, for me, in my practice, that is the dead time. That is everything's still, nothing's moving, things are decaying, things are falling away. And then Yule is actually the new year for me. So
I mean, that makes sense too, like, especially when we go back to the correspondence with the waning crescent moon. And that's also moving into the dark moon period, which is right
yeah,
before the new moon, the rebirth of everything, the start of the new cycle. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I
yeah.
like your idea of making your own personal wheel. I think that's really, I don't know, that just feels intuitively right.
Yeah, it was really cool. I've done it for a couple of my friends as well, and they've really gotten a lot out of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, the hardest part is counting how many days go in between and then matching that up. I mean, it takes a while, but once you get it done
Yeah.
every year for you, so
Yeah.
yeah,
You never have to do it again once it's done. Yeah.
exactly.
That's such a neat idea. I'm so glad I asked.
That's a really beautiful way to pull in an exercise. Just, I think, even when it's your birthday, just to honor it even that much more. I'm learning so much, but I've never even thought to do it that way.
Yeah, agree. I mean, I started using that as like my personal new year, my birthday, I mean, because it's your solar return in astrology. So it's kind of, yeah, it's like your rebirth in a way. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's kind of why with Yule, of course, that is the sun is reborn. So that was kind of why I set that as my birthday. That's the start date. But
Gotcha.
I guess it would depend person to person. But it's really interesting because I mean, for instance, when the rest of the year is celebrating, say, Samhain, this time of year, for me, it's more of a springtime, well, summertime kind of feel. So that's why,
Totally.
energetically, my brain is in a different place than say the seasons. So it's neat to see how they work together.
Yeah. And that brings me, I was going to mention this at the end of the show, maybe, but I'm super interested to hear from if we have listeners in the Southern Hemisphere. I mean, technically, you'd be moving into Beltane at this time, right? And so I wonder, are Samhain and Halloween, they must be separate for you, right? Because they're coming at different times in the year. But I wonder how much like American and Western culture or Northern Hemisphere culture make their way down there? Like, are you still seeing all these posts about pumpkins and falling leaves? And I mean, so how much does that difference in energy and time of the year make a difference, or does it not make a difference? And of course, like, I mean, you've been living like that your whole life, so it's probably no different for you. But I'm just really intrigued by that sort of dichotomy in a way.
Yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
interested to learn that too.
I have a few people connected through the tarot community that do live in the Southern Hemisphere. It might be fun to, I'm going to pull them. I'm going to ask some
Yeah.
questions, and maybe even as we post for this episode, just get their perspective on how they manage their wheel of the year. So
Yeah.
I'm on it. Research.
I would love that. Yeah. Amazing. And anybody who's willing to share would love to hear your experience. Okay, let's move into some history of Samhain. Jekanovia, I see you have some very detailed notes here, and I'm super excited to dive in. So let's chat about how the ancestors celebrated Samhain.
Excellent. Yes. I mean, I mentioned before that it's really, really ancient. Since I actually did research a few years ago on this, but I've also learned in the meantime that they've actually found evidence in, like, cave drawings and things like that, as far back as 3500 BC of like Samhain type celebrations
Wow.
at this time of year. And there's like, stone circles that they found from those ancient people that line up perfectly. It blows my mind that it's been celebrated for that long.
Yeah, that's
Like,
so cool.
blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, the Samhain that we know and love it's an Irish and Scottish tradition. So the four Gaelic festivals are Imbolc, Beltane, Lughnasadh, and Samhain. So those were the main four. It wasn't so much the solstices and equinoxes were important, but these were the big deal, big part.
Oh, interesting. For some reason I would have thought it would have been the other way, but
Yeah, I always did too.
Hmm.
But yeah, the last few years, I've really found that they really focus more on these four.
Hmm.
Yeah. So again, it's another fire festival. So lots of fires, bonfires, gathering. It is usually the last gathering, like big gathering before winter. Because Yule, there would be, of course, family and things, but this was when this one last hoorah before everything shut down.
Yeah.
They would do a lot of divination and communication with loved ones because they believe that the veil between the worlds was thinnest. Of course, it's very common knowledge now, I think. And they would also make offerings. They would do prayers and blessings, asking for protection from the ancestors to make it through the winter. Because, I mean, it was hard times. People got sick. Like, you were lucky if you made it through the winter at that point.
Right.
So even a lot of the divination was actually geared towards like who was going to live to see next spring, which, I mean, it sounds really
Oh,
dark.
wow. Yeah.
But back in the day, I guess that was just where, it's just how they lived. They didn't think anything of it. It was also a celebration of death. So anybody who they'd lost through the year, this is when they would, for instance, they would set a place at a table, would have no food on the plate, but it would be a place just for those that they lost, which I think I like that. I like to do that myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they carved turnips. So they didn't have pumpkins, of course. Pumpkins is a North American thing. So they would carve turnips, which I tried it once.
Yeah.
It was really hard. Like, I mean, bonus points for anybody who carves turnips. And they would face them out of their windows to scare off any of the evil spirits that were kind of looking inside the houses and going to get them.
Gotcha.
And yeah.
So it's not so much a hollowing out. They're actually like carving faces into the turnips.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then they would put candles in them, of course, to light them up. I think that possibly the candles weren't left all night because candles were expensive and, very dear at that time. So I'm sure that maybe they lit them for a little while, but I don't think they would let them run all night like a lot of people seem to think they did.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know. But yeah.
Well, you might have been there, just a different life.
Yeah. I just don't remember.
Yeah.
Really remember.
So many lives ago. Yeah. Yeah, that's the ebook that you put together for Samhain. As I was reading about the carving of the turnips, I was just thinking well, first of all, it struck me as funny just because I'm so used to the pumpkin thing. But then I was like, yeah, this must be really difficult just because of the shape, I think. It just must make it more tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've seen any that are carved, they're creepy as hell. They are creepy.
Oh, wow. Okay, we're going to have to find some photos.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like, I don't know. For me, they creep me right out.
You know what? That reminds me, and we'll have to do a Google for some pictures, but have you ever seen anybody carve out apple faces and then they leave them out to dry and then they start to like, like they dry out. The moisture goes away and they get wrinkly and they actually look like spooky old faces. That's what comes to mind.
Oh,
that sounds really fun, actually.
I'm just here for the random tidbits today, you guys. I'm actually learning everything from Jackanovia and Jasmine today.
I really like that idea. That's so fun. I mean,
it is.
You might as well shake it up.
Bunch.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna find a picture and share because
I want to make a whole bunch and just like hang them from the ceiling. So there's like all these little shriveled heads all over the place.
Like make like a little tree of shriveled apple heads or something. Yeah, like a spooky tree. I love that idea. There was one thing I was going to go back to. Oh, do we know why it was thought that this is the time, or why, like how this came about that our ancestors thought this is the time when the veil is thinning or thinner or whatever?
I'm not 100% sure. My own theory is that because this time of year was all about death.
Okay.
It's when people we're really starting to think about the mortality because, again, you have this long, cold winter ahead. So you might run out of food. It might be too cold. Who knows what? You get sick. So, of course, they were facing that reality. So that would make them really think about death. So I think that had a lot to do with it. And also because this is the third harvest, which was the harvest of usually the livestock. So it was all death. And I think that's where like the myth of the sacrifices, the animal sacrifices came from. They weren't actually sacrificing animals for, malicious intent. They were actually
they needed
their livestock.
Yeah, they needed to eat.
yeah. They, and because at that time of year it was cool enough that the meat wouldn't spoil before they got to it.
Right. It's fascinating to think, like you're talking about this myth of the animal sacrifice, which I think has permeated so much of pop culture. And it feels like almost the entire horror genre has been really influenced by Samhain and all of these celebrations. And I just love thinking about that, like you were saying at the top of the show, it's such an old tradition. And the fact that, now it could be the reason for all of these haunted house stories that I love so much. Just, it's so cool.
Yep. Love it.
Okay. So
it's that unknown factor, right? We don't know.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And especially back then when, there was a chance that you weren't going to survive that winter and, yeah. Well, so how do you celebrate Samhain now, Jackanovia?
Well, I mentioned they call it a dumb supper. I hate that word for it because I don't like that. So I call it, your ancestor supper or
Yeah.
your memory meal, memorial meal.
Oh,
But
I
so I
like
do
that
that.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, I do a lot of baking, a lot of seasonal baking, decorating the house, of course, to do the trick or treating. I dress up every year. I always get complimented on my excellent Halloween costume when I'm actually just wearing my clothes. So I just go to town. I don't have to tone it down, which is wonderful. Yeah. So I mean, just the little things like that. I do a lot of genealogy and ancestry stuff this time of year. Yeah. So I usually have them around anyway, but I mean, I don't know. I know nobody's going to see it in the show, but like I've got like a lot of keepsakes. Like I don't know if you can even see
Yeah.
this in the photo, but old family photo albums from as far back as I can get. Yeah, it's just that connection. It's fostering that connection with the past. I do a lot of divination and forecasting.
What are you doing
Yeah.
when you're forecasting?
Usually tarot, and I try every year to learn something new.
Okay.
So this year I've been working with the Astro Dice, which is hard for me because I'm not an astrology whiz. I'm trying really
It's so
hard.
cool. I love it.
Yeah. And next year I'm going for the Ogham days. That's my next.
What is that again? I think you explained it on a different Wheel of the Year, maybe, or a different episode, but.
Yeah, well, the Ogham is like they call it the Druid alphabet. It's just basically a bunch of just lines, the tree language, I think some people call it.
Oh.
So yeah, it's really intriguing. I don't know a lot about it, which is why I want to.
Very cool.
Oh my gosh, now I'm intrigued. So I can't wait to walk through that with you. Once you learn, you'll have to teach us.
Absolutely.
I mean, just the fact that it's called a tree language makes it so intriguing. Intriguing. Yeah. I'll see myself out.
That's a good time.
Don't worry, I'll see myself out now. The ancestor stuff, I think there's so many interesting activities. And to go back to this lovely ebook that you created, there were so many cool ideas in this, but just like the simple thing, and then you're talking about all these keepsakes that you have, there was this idea to just like clean up or polish stuff that came from your ancestors or those keepsakes, like clear away the dust and, make sure that they're in good condition, like just as a way to honor them. So I've got all of this jewelry from, more recent relatives, and some of them have gone a little, worse for wear. And so I'm looking really forward to actually spending some time polishing them up and making them look nice again. And it just feels like such an easy thing to do, but such a sacred and deeply connecting thing to do.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people, they'll take old family heirloom jewelry, and if it's broken or it's not usable, they'll actually turn it into decorations for their Yule tree. But they take the time between Samhain and Yule to do.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
That's so smart because, you never want to get rid of those things, right? There's always something in you that wants to keep them, at least for me. I don't know. They always feel way too precious to throw out, So
yeah,
figuring out.
Well, have you guys heard about psychometry?
No, do tell.
Okay, so what comes to mind is it's a type of psychic gift, and we're all psychic, right? It's just a matter of can we enhance our gifts by becoming mindful of them. But psychometry is a version of somatic sensing. So somatic is how your body feels. So it's like when you empathically or physically feel something. A lot of us are very somatic responsive when, it's like I have good vibes, bad vibes, or whatever. So the psychometry is when you get information by touching objects or people. And so there are psychics that will hold an object and then get the vision or see or know something because they're holding it or touching it. And that's just what came to mind for me. It's like, what a cool ritual or thing to do is just when you're touching the things of your ancestors or the jewelry and the cleaning it. It's having that, it's almost like if you were hyper aware or just being open to any messages that came through, it's activating that psychometry gift that we all have. It's just what level are we open to it?
I love that.
That is such a good idea.
Yeah.
And actually, let's face it, not everybody has a connection with their ancestors. Sometimes it's by choice, sometimes it's just because they don't have that connection offered to them. So I wonder if you could take Jess's idea with that psychometry and go to, say, an antique store and just kind of envelop yourself in the past, just the general past, because even though you may not know where you came from or who you came from, you still belong and you still, you have a history, even if you don't know it. So maybe connecting in that way might help, I don't know, bring around some new ideas.
Think about how you feel. I don't know about everybody, but when you go into a really old building or an old church or a library, and there's just something about feeling like you've been there before, or it just feels very comfortable, or there's history there and you are absorbing that, I think, at the cellular level. And I do believe it's because with past life, there's just something that speaks to, whatever is still within that soul that just has a familiar connection to it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've definitely felt that before. I think it was like a really old bookstore and it was used books too. So they have all kinds of people's energy all over them, right? So
yes.
Yeah, that's a great idea though. I'm so glad you brought that up, Jessie, and such a good idea for how to kind of work with it if you're not super connected with your own ancestors. Yeah. And then there was another thing that you had outlined. I'm just trying to find it here in my notes. I think it was kind of a mix between a gratitude and an ancestor tree. Do you want to describe what that was?
Yeah, basically you go out somewhere around you that's nearby. You don't want to be taking limbs off the tree. So anything that's just fallen limbs, you pick them up, put them in a vase, can be big, can be small. And you just hang either leaves, or you can cut out pieces of paper or hang, maybe paper clip photos and hang those on the tree. And you're either writing down what you're grateful for, or writing down the names of the people who you're remembering. It's sitting down in that space, making it sacred. So for me, of course, there's like, you clean up the whole space and you sit down with a tea, and you have like an incense going, some soft music, and it's just really focusing on what you're grateful for and who you're grateful for. And it's almost like a ritual and a ceremony in itself. And then you just keep going with it for the whole season.
Oh, I love that. I just like the idea of that aesthetic too. I mean, it's, all throughout the warmer months, we're trying to like bring plants and flowers and things like that inside. And it feels the same way with this, to just bring some sticks and leaves inside. I just really like that idea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've started collecting sticks, and I think I might be too late for the leaves. I got a couple, but they dried up before I could really get to them. And now, of course, it's all super crunchy leaves, but I might give it a go with some crunchy leaves anyway.
Yeah. You can even grab bay leaves and use a hole punch.
Yeah.
That works. Whatever you've got on hand always works.
Yeah. No, bay leaves would be great. I guess I was really excited for like the different colored leaves too, but I don't know. I hop on them before I can pick them up. So
it's funny you mentioned that. I have bundles of sticks in my office. Because I have a beautiful aspen tree. I love aspens. I've always been so drawn to them. And I had to do some trimming earlier in the season. And I was like, I can't let these branches go. I mean, they're just so magical. So I bundled them all up and I've got them in the corners of my office. And yeah, there's just something about bringing nature inside like that. Maybe I'll make
the quivering aspens or quaking.
Yes.
Aspens? Is that I'll have those all around my house.
Oh, I would die.
What's great about those? The reason that they quiver is because they're actually listening to your ancestors and the gods and goddesses, and they're translating messages to you.
I believe it. They are so, they just draw me in. And I mean, if you've ever looked at one, the way that they have the eye in the bark, and I mean, they're soul trees for sure. That's so cool.
That gave me chills. I loved that.
Hey man, I'm a druid, right? I'm all about trees.
Totally. Okay, one other sort of ritual thing that I wanted to ask you about is this idea, like the creating talismans, however you pronounce it. I am not super familiar with this and would love to know how you go about doing it and why we might do it at Samhain.
Well, Usually for my practice, my talismans, they can be anything. They can be like if I find a coin on the ground, that could be my talisman. Like it
Okay.
doesn't have to be anything in particular, or it can be something you make. Like I've made little tiny dolls, like with like matchsticks, and then you wrap the thread around that. Like you can do anything to make a talisman. The importance is the intention you're putting into it. You have to speak to it, tell it, what its purpose is, why you're making it, thank it for its service. So the power behind it is the belief that you put in it.
Okay.
If that makes sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be different for everyone. So it's a matter of just picking up something. I usually suggest something small. You don't want to carry, a huge rock in your pocket.
Gotcha.
So just make it something small. It can be a crystal, but just make it manageable. And even something inconspicuous. It could be like some beads on a string that you wrap around your rearview mirror. Like if you have to, because I know not everybody is safe to practice openly. So even finding something incognito to do something like that.
Yeah. Well, like a coin, that would be perfect too, because, yeah. So what would you, what power might you put into it? Like just as an example.
I have done healing talismans. So some to either keep me healthy or to make me healthy or people I care about. It can be protection. I know, I've moved several times, like big moves across the country, and I've made talismans to protect, our vehicle, protect our belongings, obviously protect us, making a swift move. And then once the purpose is served, the reason I like to make them, out of the dolls and stuff is so that afterwards I can thank them and burn them in a fire.
Gotcha.
Because then it's releasing them, it's setting them free, and then they can go on and be happy to do their own thing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, and it's really just so much, like you said, it's putting the intention, it's a transfer of energy. Like everything is energy, right? So it makes perfect sense that when you're putting the intention into whatever item, and that item is pure energy as well. I mean, 99% energy, everything, right? You think it's solid, but guess what? Not so much.
Nope.
Quantum has proved that there's space between everything. And so I love the idea of, just releasing the energy back. It's the same with death. I mean, you think about that connection there. Death is just transformation. It's an expansion into the greatest transformation of our life. I was listening to another podcast and they were talking about that so beautifully. It's like, we are not prepared. Like we, in this culture, at least the Western American culture of today, American, Canadian, whatever, Western culture, is like, you don't think about death. It's like, nope, don't even go there. Don't think about it. Don't honor it. Well, we need to prepare, ourselves for the greatest transformation of our life. Like that's really what our soul is meant to do, is to do our soul work here and be released into the greater universe. So in a way that's like, you've got this little micro of your talisman, but really it's just this bigger, it's a connection to the bigger purpose, which is our own death and transformation. So
who's going to be the best death doula ever? I think it's going to be Jessie.
I vote Jess.
Only if you're okay with the woo-woo death doula.
How would it not be woo-woo? I feel like it could only be woo-woo with a death doula.
I think that's why I'm
really
so
hard
drawn
to say.
it.
Woo-woo death doula. Woo-woo death doula. That's really hard to say. But oh my gosh, that was really beautiful. I just love all of that so much. Yeah. Yeah.
I like when you said like we don't really think about death. There's a book I read. It's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Highly recommend. If you don't like curse words, maybe don't read it. But he does have a section in it.
If you're listening to this podcast, you probably like curse words. So I think
I fucking hope so.
I use fuck like punctuation. I'm on the show. But yeah, he has a whole section in it. And he's talking about, facing death and not being afraid of it, and realizing that by realizing that we have a time limit. So that almost helps you enjoy the moment more now, because it's not going to be forever.
Agreed.
So it really makes you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm so glad I asked about the talisman thing. That was a great whole tangent that we took there. That was awesome. And I'm really excited to make some. Okay, I think that was all of my questions. You had so many interesting and fun activities in that ebook. I think eventually we're going to figure out how to, make a Wheel of the Year package for all of you lovely listeners. And pretty sure those ebooks are going to be a part of it. So stay tuned for that for sure. Is there anything else that we missed, Jekanovia, in terms of how we can be celebrating? Because I know Jesse's got some ideas as well that we could kind of move on to, if not.
Yeah, there was just one thing I almost forgot to mention.
Yeah, go for it.
I always try, because I live in a very old part of Canada, so there's very old cemeteries, and a lot of the tombstones are worn away. You can't see the names on them anymore. So I try to make it a point to visit them this time of year, and just, even though I don't know their names, I want them to remember, to know that they are remembered.
Yeah,
they're not forgotten. So that's a really important thing that you can do as well. So, and I think it translates into even people who are maybe feeling lost in the world. Maybe you're transferring that energy to them, just so they know that they are important. Even if nobody knows their name, they're important. And I want to put that out there.
Well, and even if it's not an old cemetery, I love the idea of just walking any cemetery and just speaking the names. And I think that is such a beautiful honoring of those lives, just to, in that moment, say, so-and-so, and maybe if they're next to their partner in life, and just giving them that moment back, because it's all connected. But, I'm doing that for sure.
I love the idea of speaking the names. This is amazing. Samhain's the best.
we should all just go in and get like a plot of land and have our own little coven, and then we can have our community move here with us, and then we're just going to do everything our own way.
Please.
Yeah, Samhain every day.
Yes, please. Well, we can do Lunasa sometimes for Jekanovia, because we know how much she loves that one. So.
Bread. Everybody likes bread.
We'll just do Lunasa, Mabon, and Samhain, and just like keep moving through those three.
I love where your head's at.
And if you want to join, just send us a DM at Tarot Coven Cast. Let us know. All right, Jesse, what do you have for us? What are you thinking? How are you celebrating Samhain this year?
Well, I'm definitely going to do the cemetery walk, because I think that is, and you guys know, I love to, when I go to this other side of town and I have different workshops that I'm doing monthly on my lunch hours, it's right next to this awesome cemetery, and I go have my lunch with the dead, or my dinner with the dead. And I just sit there, and it's the best. I just kind of sit and just think about maybe what that person was in life, and just give them some energy. And it's just the most peaceful place, right? The cemetery is just a place. If you have trouble getting quiet, or you're in a big city, just find the cemetery and go there. It is like instant connection and so healing. So definitely going to do that. What I'm also going to be doing is doing a lot of my personal yard cleanup, and just making sure that I've, that fall feel, like I guess it is kind of like wrapping up the year, and then maybe even just some ritual practice of burning some of the things that were growing in my yard that gave me and my family nourishment, or just added to the beauty that I've experienced all year, whether it be, the flowers. And so I plan to do that. And then also I'll be doing some tarot work as well, and have been journaling on some ideas in leading up to that. So last weekend I was able to put on a tarot and energy preservation protection workshop. It was so fun. Yay. It was just so fun to be creative and pull some things together. But a lot of those rituals in there, it was like, this is so perfectly lined up to Samhain and what that is. So I'm gonna spend as much time outside and in that fall feel as possible.
Yeah, for sure. And then you've got some stuff here on energy cleansing. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So these are just ways, like any time of the year, we need to be very hyper vigilant about our own energy management. And this is coming in, if you tend to be empathic, like you are feeling things, and many people who are drawn to the mystical arts, or especially tarot, you just are. You're more tuned in to the feelings and energies that are all around you. And so it's extra important for you to be mindful of that and recognize what is your own energy and also what is not yours. And then if you're feeling like things are sticking onto you, or that you just are leaking energy, that there are ways for you to protect yourself, whether it's through a visualization or it's just this daily practice or the talisman for sure. That's kind of part of this. And so very simply, much like a shower that you would give your own body. And again, we've talked about that, even with like getting chakras aligned, you can get in a nice cold spray and just shock the system. And it actually will help with your chakra alignment, but just washing your hands. And after I do Reiki session, I will wash my hands and I will think about just that, anything that's connected still to me from whoever I've been working on. If you're out in the world, just wash your hands and imagine all of that energy going down the drain into the earth. And much of this is a visualization of pulling it down into the earth, because the earth can compost it. The earth can take care of those energies and clear them for you. And again, the being grounded is the important part here, making sure that you're taking time to connect to earth, even barefoot if you can. Obviously, when it's freezing cold or you've got a ton of snow, there's other ways that you can connect to earth, but it's like feeling that grounded. All right. And then imagine, like, take a moment, maybe sit outside or get next to a wall where you're feeling like you've got a very straight spine, or at least sit to where you're connected and it feels like you've got spine on the ground. And imagine that you're breathing in healthy, healing energy up from the ground and then blow out the stale energy. And this is very much breath work is so healing. And even if you get online, I'm sure there's a gazillion YouTubes just walking you through breathing. And we think we breathe, right, nonstop every day of our life, but are we really breathing in a way that is nourishing? And once you do that, if you ever attend a breathwork session, yoga even, you'll do a couple moments of breathing, it will kick in your
the different nervous system, or parasympathetic. Yeah.
Parasympathetic nervous system. Thank you. Thank you very much. And so we're just breathing, but so important. Okay. Another visualization that I love. Imagine a gold hoop kind of falling over you or coming from the ground, whatever feels like it's better, like in your mind, what you can visualize easier, but that it's just like, I always think of a white light scan, like it's just kind of scanning my body. And then when I'm breathing, I kind of bring the scanner up. And if I'm breathing and exhaling, I'm just kind of sending that scan of white light down. And our minds, you guys, we have all the power. We control everything we feel. And so if we can take time to just imagine that this is being cleared out, and it does take practice. I mean, often we're in our brains, right? We're analytical and thinking all the time. But if you just try it, maybe the visualization is a little hard the first time, just give yourself some practice with it. It's just like a muscle that we are needing to build up, but taking a few moments to imagine the white light coming up and down. And as it's doing that, it's just completely cleansing you at that energetic level. And it's crazy how much you can feel better. And a lot of it is just the combination of the visualization and the breath work. Okay. One of my favorite things, and highly recommend, is taking a bath with salts. So we have, we're really depleted of any minerals in our foods because of the way that our soil and the farming practices that we have in the Western world. And so minerals can help revitalize us and also clear our energy bodies. And I like to do a mix of Epsoms, of Dead Sea salt, and Himalayan salts, because there's just this combo. And these are all salts that you can find, whether you need to order them from online to send, or even places like big box stores like our Costco has these things. And honestly, you can buy it in bulk and save yourself a ton. You'll use it, but just kind of mix up a mix of the salts. And I ritually will just kind of shake it into the bath and I swirl it with my hand. And as I swirl it, I'm thinking of the healing properties that that's going to bring me as I soak and relax in the water. And then anytime I am doing an energetic bath or a cleansing bath, I stay in the tub while the water's draining out at the end. And you can, you feel this pull from gravity and visualizing anything that is still remaining, just going down the drain. And you guys, you can feel it leaving you. So it's all about helping our minds play a part in this.
And
again, the shower.
what do you think?
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Jessie. What do you think about just doing that, like with just your feet instead of your whole body? Like, because I know our feet carry a lot because that's what's always touching the ground, or it's not touching the ground too, right? So how do you think that is useful at all?
Absolutely. I mean, when you get to place, even if it's just a tub of water, salt water, that's beautiful. But think about how you feel when you are in the ocean or you put your feet in a river, or, I mean, it is absolutely connecting you to that flow and that cleansing, healing. So water is just so purifying. And something that I have learned through studies is entities, evil entities, things that are negative entities. I mean, that's a real thing, right? There's evil spirits, just like there's good and bad people and the intentions there. But entities cannot sustain themselves or be around water. Water is totally purifying, and salt as well. And so that's why fountains, rivers, I mean, if you're needing to clear something away, if I'm doing Reiki practice, I love to have water in the room, whether it's either a diffuser or maybe it's a little fountain, but entities cannot stay around where there's water. So
wow, that's so interesting to know.
Yeah, that's protection there.
That's perfect too for the idea of like a protection magic. Yeah, it's so simple. It's just water.
So simple. Smudging yourself, of course. We all love to do that, whether it's through an actual burning, or if you want to go smokeless, there's some beautiful essential oils that you can mix with, like a salt water mix that will do the same thing. All of my yogis are not just a simple child's pose where you're kind of leaning back, putting your third eye on the ground and almost like a release. Or you can even just, I'm doing it like you guys can see me here, but just like opening up the chest to the ground, third eye on the ground. And then again, just imagine it pulling, use the energy of the earth to just pull anything that you're still feeling out into the ground. Connect with nature, always, 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 even if it's cold. This just does something to our systems, right? We just have to have a reboot, and nature does that for us so beautifully. Move the energy. Let's get dancing, yoga, running, whatever it means to you. But the more we can move the energy out and feel stuck, that definitely cleanses us as well. Steam sauna, meditating, of course. Sometimes it's just getting your cards out and shuffling them. I don't know about you guys, but I may not actually pull cards, but there's something about the shuffling and the movement. And I know, Jack Novia, you talk about like hitting the deck on the table and it's clearing the energy of the deck, but there's something about it that you connecting with you're holding the deck and it's like it's clearing you as well. And then I have a really fun little waterfall exercise. It's really just a visualization of waterfall. Like if you don't have water near you, maybe you're not washing your hands in the sink, just imagine the water coming over your head and cleansing it down into the earth. And that can be very powerful as well.
Oh my gosh, so many great ideas. And I love because there's, I don't think we talked about it too much, but also in Jekanovia's ebook, she talked about the idea of cleaning out your home as well, cleaning up your altars, getting into the corners of spaces to make sure that that energy is not there anymore. And so why wouldn't you do it with your own energy too? Awesome. Well, let's move into some tarot cards that we can either work with or put on our altars, or just tarot cards that we kind of associate with Samhain. Yeah?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Jekanovia, do you want to start?
Well, you actually picked most of mine.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
I'm really into the Four of Swords, though, for this time of year, because that is your pause and reflection. Obviously, we know this. And then the other one was the Two of Swords is the other one. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but for me, it's like that you're stopping, you're kind of tuning everything else out. So you're doing that stillness, that death thing. And you're kind of taking stock. You're deciding where to go from here. You're listening for guidance. So it's that whole divination aspect. So those are the two that I added to what you guys have already talked about in the notes.
I like that you brought up the Four of Swords. That makes perfect sense for right now. I mean, my list here, it was more kind of the obvious stuff. I mean, I picked out death. It's obviously a harvest festival, but it's also what corresponds with Scorpio season. So that's just kind of the base there. Three of Cups, because for me, it's like Three of Cups feels very ritualistic, and it feels like a coven. Like it feels like when you're getting together with the people that you let your hair down with, that you can be your most authentic self with. And so for all of these Wheel of the Year celebrations, that feels like a great card to go to. And sometimes I'll say the Four of Wands for these celebrations, but that definitely feels like more the warmer months card. And I think this one the Three of Cups just feels more like Samhain, Yule, that kind of thing. The Devil, because we're doing shadow work during this time of the year as well, right? The High Priestess and the Moon, I wrote down because just those connections with your intuition and the veil. I get that sense whenever I pull those cards that it's really tapping into those themes and everything. And the Ten of Pentacles, because to me, that's about lineage and ancestry work, which of course we've already talked at length about. So, and I guess I've also got, oh no, Jessie, that's you.
Well, I kind of put in Judgment because it's really almost this awareness, this awakening, and more of the, like even in the depiction with the Smith weight of the bodies kind of coming out of the coffin-like structures where it's like they're raising, from the dead. Like it's just this cycle, almost like, just kind of a bringing back from the dead, the awakening, like,
totally.
And a lot of times in other tarot decks, awakening is used in the Judgment card as Judgment instead of saying Judgment. And so I love that. And the World, where it really is this end of the year, it's the new year. It's kind of like the cycle has ended. And I also feel very much that there's very thin veil vibes with the World, like you're connecting to the divine.
Yeah.
So it just seems a little bit closer in that space, or your soul is a little bit more open. And I put Ace of Wands because that's interesting. I put that on the list about a week ago, and I'm like, what was I thinking about that? But maybe it's just more of you kind of remember who you are, maybe because of the ritual or because of where the year is with this death rebirth. And it's like this time to activate that movement into yourself just a little bit more with the Ace of Wands. And then what came to mind just now, and bear with me, but when I think about like, say trick-or-treating or kind of having this time where it's fun, right? And it's celebration, but even thinking about Seven of Cups type energy where you've got all these baskets with symbols and things, and maybe even in the rituals that you can use, but it seems very, very Seven of Cups where there's choices and things that you can do to connect to this time of year. So
yeah,
anyway, that was just kind of a random one that popped in here, but
that fits though with the trick or treat, because it's like, be careful what you wish for, because
so true.
Trick or treat.
Trick or treat.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a great pull. I love that.
Well, this is just so fun because when I was growing up, I was allowed to trick or treat, but funny, I was never allowed to be anything witchy, right. Or, it had to stay pretty, So I always loved dressing up, and I've always loved being in character. So there's something about that. But even in the past couple of years, just kind of embracing more of the witchy Halloween side. And, we've got decorations up and skeletons and things. And I'm just like, this is feeling more. I love the energy it brings, where before it was kind of this, oh, that's so bad. You don't want to, but when you kind of think about, it's like that's coming from that place of fear, right? When we remove the fear, and it's like, well, what am I afraid of death for?
Right.
Like everyone dies, like I'm going to die. And again, as I was saying, it's kind of this ultimate transformation. And so I just think to make it more of a natural part of life, I really love when I see people it's just so natural for them to be so connected to the death aspect. So
yeah.
It's fun.
I love
fun
that you're talking about the decorations and getting so excited about it. And I had a little, I was worried this year that maybe people wouldn't do it just because of COVID and everything. And we don't know if kids are going to be able to trick or treat. It's different everywhere, right? And But still, in my neighborhood, there's been so many decorations up and people are still going all out and they've got like these big, like inflatable things and lights and everything. And it's just been so nice to see. I love that everybody, it's like, I don't know. I know that we're all a collective and we can tap into that at any time, but certain holidays come around like this and you just feel that energy. And it's, I don't know. I just love it so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm there with you.
Yeah, with us, we actually put more effort into our outdoor decorations because we're like, well, if the kids can't go trick-or-treating, we got to do something cool for them. Like, I mean, we set up every year, we do like a cemetery scene because obviously we live in the country. We have like this huge side yard. So we've got like all these fake crosses up with RIP written on them. And we've got like ghosts and witches. And we've got all kinds of stuff. But, you know, it's just cheap stuff that we did.
Yeah. Okay. Pictures, please.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I'm just thinking about you on the 31st being out in your little witch hat, and that is the house that I want to go to.
I know. Yeah. I don't need the candy. I just want that ambiance.
Yeah.
I already told everybody in my house, I said, we are going to put speakers outside and crank all the Halloween music until 11.
Oh my goodness.
Yay.
Yes.
Because if these kids, at least they can drive by with their windows down and hear it.
Oh, that's so fun. I agree. It's like we have to do something, you know, and I feel for all these parents that have been home with kids for, 6-7 months. And it's like, just give them something to do.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you ever have any spooky experiences? I'm wondering, you're out there in the forest and kind of feeling things a little bit more. Does the energy shift for you during this time?
It does. It doesn't, like, I want to say, yeah, it's probably spooky, but it's, to me, I'm used to it. So, I mean, you feel them more. You feel like we have the forest saints and the guardians, and there's just all these little spirits running around, and you just notice them more. They're more little fairies and such. I mean, you can feel them watching you more too. They're more curious. Like, it's like they can see you more clearly too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's almost like you feel that you're being watched. But I mean, I'm so used to it. It doesn't bother me. But I think if somebody else was maybe walking through the forest, they may be like, get me the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. You'd have to have somebody like, I don't know, a friend come and visit you at this time of year, like maybe next year or something, and we'll do a comparison.
I am up for that.
Because, yeah, I totally get it. I mean, you're out in that forest every day. So even if the energy is shifting, it's probably something that you're just so used to. So,
yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I call them Ents because Lord of the Rings. So it just fits.
Okay.
But I remember the very first time I ever experienced it, I called them tree spirits because they're like these like really tall, like long, spindly with long fingers. Like they're creepy looking, but they look kind of like grotesque trees that can move, but they're really tall and skinny. They're not like what you see in movies. So, and they're just shadows. You just kind of see them every corner while moving. And I was scared shitless.
Did you feel it? You feel them.
Yeah, you can feel them watching you. And then when you finally start seeing them, it's like, am I nuts? Am I crazy? I'm losing it, right? But over time, you just kind of get to know they're keeping an eye on you. They're actually protecting you. So if you show them respect, they will protect you from anything.
So cool. So. Oh my goodness. I can't wait to come visit you in the forest.
I can't either. I really can't.
Well, we should get into a couple of spooky stories, speaking of feeling energy shifts and anything spooky happening. But I just wanted to quickly mention that, as always, we will have a tarot spread just for you lovely listeners. So you'll find the link in the show notes and you can use the code ancestor to access it. So, I mean, we kind of teased some spooky stuff on the premiere episode, and I unfortunately still haven't had a spooky moment. I've been watching spooky stuff for weeks now, and still nothing has happened. So clearly that's not how you go about it. But anyways, spooky television will have to keep me going for now. Who wants to dive into another story? Oh, and we should talk about protection magics as well. So.
Ooh, okay. What first? Spooky stories or protection magics?
Some of my stories will lead into protection, actually. So if you wanted, Jess, if you want to go first.
I will go first with my spooky story. So this happened when I was in college. It was the summer after my freshman year in college. So I would have been about 19, and I stayed on campus and had been working there that summer. And my college was away from where I had lived. So I stayed there and had a job where I worked late into the night. And I remember I had ridden my bike on campus back to my place where I was staying, which was a dorm type place. And they had this little hill outside the back. And it was just this, I want to say it was a full moon. I'm just going to go with the full moon because that's what it feels like. But it was really bright. I just remember it being like the summer night that just seemed like it was so bright and beautiful. And there was some kind of an energy where I was like, I could not go to sleep. And here we're talking about, it's like 2:30 in the morning. So I just took a blanket. I walked out the back of this little hillside, and there was like this field behind where I lived. And I remember just looking at the sky and the stars and just kind of it just felt really magical.
Yeah.
And I was not in the spiritual space that I am now, right? So just enjoying an evening. And I remember feeling it first. All of a sudden I felt in my body, and it's that hole where it goes right up your spine, pricklies on the neck, and you just know that something is watching you.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked out across this field, and to give you an idea of, it was probably about 50 yards. And for anyone who's in the metric system, I'm sorry, I don't know how to convert that. Half a football field, maybe. American football. And I kid you not, there was this glowing figure. It was a greenish, yellowish, glowing figure. And it did not look like a human form. I mean, it looked like a body, but it was not like it was somebody standing there in this moonlight dark. Like I could tell it was not a person. And it was just like straight up pins and needles all up and down my body. And I kind of just looked at it, and it was looking at me, and I had never experienced anything like this. And I knew what I was seeing. And I was like, I see a ghost. I'm seeing a spirit right now. And like in my brain, I knew that was what I was experiencing. I didn't really know what to do. So I'm like trying to like breathe. And I just gathered up my blanket and I walked up the hill, like knowing that it was watching me. And I knocked on the door of my neighbor who, this is college, right? So most people are kind of up. And I just said, I have to tell you what I just saw. And he kind of listened and he was like, are you okay? And I'm like, yes. But it's just like my brain was telling me one thing, but in my body, I just felt it and I saw the glow of it. And after that, it just kind of opened me up to, I'm like, I know what I saw.
Yeah.
I know what I experienced. Like, you can't tell me that ghosts don't exist. You can't tell me that. I mean, I just could feel it. And even now, 23 years later, I feel it the way I felt it that night. I can still see it the way I saw it. Like
Wow.
Everything is so solidified in my mind. And so part of the question now is like, man, in my journey here, at some point, I would love to know, who did I see? What was it? Like, why me? Why that night? I don't know, but it just was really one of those magical moments where I think it was the first little glimmer of like, there's more to what you've been told. There's more out there. Can you be open to other stories, other things that, outside of the programming that has, come in. And so it's kind of that first little look into this other, this connection to spirit.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wow.
I so agree with you that I would want to know like more context about it, because the experience is one thing, and being open to it and acknowledging what it was for you, and, not allowing somebody else to tell you, no, it was just a weird light or like a trick or a shadow or whatever. But yeah, understanding maybe the story or who it was would be so fascinating. So maybe you'll have to like revisit that spot or something on a full moon.
Well, and that's the thing I have.
Okay.
So over the years, if I've gone up to visit college, and my girls are actually up there at the same college that I was, and
so cool.
we were touring the campus as I was dropping them off. And I remember kind of walking and seeing and kind of just being like, okay, in my, gauging the distance and where it was. And what's so crazy about it is there was a street light, and the way it was like, it was glowing. It was outside of the light of the street light. So it wasn't in, and I just knew.
Yeah.
It's like I knew.
Yeah.
We were having this conscious communication, when they say that there's things are not of language, but it's something that I just knew. And I hadn't been drinking. There was no drugs involved, like nothing. I had been,
Yeah.
So
I mean, the fact that you still feel it so powerfully all these years later, I think is really a testament to whatever it was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, are there any other reports of something similar? Have you looked into it?
Well, I don't know about that spot, but on campus, there were quite a few buildings that were said to have been haunted. And just to lead in a really quick little story, I was a music minor, and I had to do a lot of practice in this. It was called Reidenbach Hall. And if you can imagine, it had been a dormitory, so little rooms, really old building. And each room had a creepy old piano. So you have all these people, you go in there and everybody's practicing their instruments or pianos. And it was creepy as fuck, you guys. Like if you were there late at night, finishing your practice and coming out, like that place was so haunted. It was very close to that building. And so while I never saw anything in the building, I felt things in that building. But everyone did. It was really, really haunted. And so I think the campus itself, that, just like a lot of old campuses, a lot of life has happened, deaths and, spirits surrounding those older buildings. And so, yeah, felt a few things on the campus itself, but I know,
awesome.
fun stuff.
Yeah, so cool.
That's
Love the
so
idea of the
cool.
old creepy piano. So perfect. Well, thank you for sharing all that.
Thank you for listening.
Oh my gosh, of course. Anytime. Well, Jekanovia, what do you got for us?
I had to narrow it down, so I picked 2 stories.
Bragging.
So, well, the first one was when I was very little. So I know it was before, when we still lived on base. So it was before I was 9. So it was like 8 or younger. And it went on for a long period of time. So I don't know when it started. I just remember that it just went on until we moved. So one night I was laying in bed, and there was all of a sudden, this guy standing in the corner of my room, right in front of my closet, just staring at me. And I would look at him, and I was like, I remember just kind of looking, going like, why are you in my room? Like, who are you? What do you want? Of course, I mentioned to my parents. And as far as I remember, they were like, oh, it's just your imagination, or you must have been dreaming or something. So I left it alone. But the thing was, and I don't want to say too much because it might trigger. But there were extensive head injury. So it was very obvious what had happened.
Okay.
I'm trying to say this without triggering anyone. But the back of the head was gone. And I could see it. I saw it. It was grotesque and gross and nasty. I saw it. I was a little kid and I saw it. And so it went on for as long as I can remember until we moved out of that house. Every night, he didn't say anything. He just stood there and looked at me. So I would just pull my blankets up over my head, just tell myself, my mom and dad said it's not real. Like, it's in my imagination. Well, about 6 or 7 years ago, I guess it was, I was camping with my father and some friends, and we were around the campfire telling spooky stories. And I told this one because I was like, hey, it'll be fun. And my dad looked at me. He said, that's really weird. He said, because, when you were about that age, a man who lived not far from us injured himself in exactly that way that I had described. And so for me, I was like, oh, so I guess my father knew the man. But yeah,
whoa.
so that's the first memory I have of seeing something, but I didn't know it was actually something until recently.
Right.
So yeah, so that was creepy.
Oh man. Wow. So that's definitely a darker, spooky story for sure.
It was. I would be more descriptive, but like I said, it's sensitive, and I don't want to.
No, that's totally fair. I mean, I think most people could probably pick up on what was happening.
Get the drift.
I'm always really fascinated to hear stories of people who have seen things when they were young. And I wonder why certain people see things when they're young. I like, are they super open to it? Are they just the right place, right time? Do you know what I mean? Like, I just find it so, because as an adult, I mean, now I'm like, let's go, spirits, come on. Like, and it's still not happening, but like,
I think it's because when we're children, we haven't been trained not to see things.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's a different part of our brain that works, right? Perceiving something. But when we're kids, we're like either, we don't kind of differentiate between what's physically there and what's energetically there.
Yes. Great point. No, that's a good point.
And of course, as children, when we say something, what are we told? We're told, oh, there's nothing there. It's your imagination. So we write it off. And our brains are trained that when we see something, it's imagination. It's not actually there.
Yeah. Wow.
So we almost have to unlearn that. And I think that's a lot of the case with adults who want to learn. It's a matter of unlearning what you've been told and letting your brain tell you what's actually there.
Yeah. 1,000%. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why I love tarot so much, because it's a tool that is undoing all of that analytical, logical thinking.
Such a good point. It's true, because you know what? Like, often I see things out of the corner of my eye, and I always say like, oh, it's just a thing out of the corner of my eye. It's nothing, but maybe it's not nothing. So you're right. There is still undoing to be done.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my next story, not quite so gross. We lived in the haunted house that I mentioned actually in the season premiere episode.
Mm-hmm.
And so off the kitchen, it was a very old house. So off the kitchen, there's like this big pantry, like a walk-in pantry. And to get in the basement, it was like literally the old school, like you have to pull up the trap door, prop it up, and get into the basement.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's already creepy.
Here I am going. Yeah, exactly. And like the light switch, of course, is at the bottom of the basement.
Of course.
So you're like going down in the dark. I hated it. I hated it down there. But so there's actually more reasons that I hated it. Here's the story. So I went down there. I had my hands full with something I was taking. I don't remember what it was. It was like a bag of something I was taking down. I think it was like sawdust or something. I don't know. I was on my way down. So I had my hands full in one side, and my other hand was picking up the door, the trap door. So I leaned down, pulled up the trap door, and I kind of looked down. And the way the stairs went, I kind of went down, hit a platform, and then went down again. And at the bottom of the stairs, there was this old man looking up at me. But there was no lights on. So he was like illuminated himself, but he wasn't like glowing, but he was just, I could see him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in a hospital, like a little hospital, old school hospital gown looking thing. And he was just standing at the bottom of the stairs looking up at me. And I stood there and my brain was like trying to process what I was seeing, because this was with my eyes. This wasn't like intuitively seeing it. This was like a dude standing at the bottom of the stairs looking back up.
Oh my God.
So I had these bags in my one hand, had the trap door open with the other. And I don't know, maybe like a few seconds. It felt like forever. Yeah. A few seconds where like my breath, I couldn't catch my breath. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything. And then suddenly I was like, I chucked the bags down the stairs at the guy, slammed the door, told the kids, I said, get your fucking coats, we're going out. And I didn't go back to the house until my husband got there.
Yeah. Okay. I was totally waiting to see if you were going to throw the bag at this guy, because I was like, that's exactly what I would do. Is just chuck the bag, like, see you later, buddy.
What I thought it was going to do.
Yeah.
Not going to hit them. But yeah, so, and that was crazy. That was
wow.
insanity.
So this is the house that you contacted paranormal investigators about.
Yes. Yeah. It was, because it was actually a hospital at one point.
Right. Yes.
And so the basement was more.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow.
So yeah, I hated it down there. But it was also situated right beside the church.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was a recipe for disaster. But there was something really not friendly. I don't want to say evil, and I don't want to say any names of anything that might have been there, but there was suggestion. But in this pantry that I told you about, actually, I would go to the store and buy, cans of soup and canned vegetables, like fresh from the grocery store. Well, like within a few days, of course, I'd open one and it would be rotten. There would be like mold in it. Whoa. It would be like completely rancid. And I just thought it was weird. And I found out later that's actually a sign of something that's very dark and negative and, malicious.
Wow.
But yeah, things were thrown at us and everything. But one of the main things, and this kind of leads into the protection thing, they hate the scent of anything citrus. So your oranges, your lemons, your grapefruit, any of those scents,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you have the fresh fruits and you boil them in water on your stove, that repels them like you wouldn't believe. The only night that we slept without any happenings was when I had spent the day with that on the stove simmering.
Wow.
So I always recommend citrus, anything citrus. I still to this day, when I wash dishes or wash the floor, I put 3 either handfuls or pinches or teaspoons of salt in everything because, as Jesse was actually mentioning earlier, that it repels evil. Like, evil can't exist in the same space as that. It just clears it right out. So anytime, even my windows, I throw some salt in like my window washer, everything. So
Wow. Okay.
there's a little tip for you. Any church that does holy water, they will give it for free. You just have to go in and request it. That does work. And it goes back to kind of that talisman idea where it's the power they put behind it that actually works. It's not, you don't have to believe in it for that to work because somebody else has already put that magic into it. So you can always go and request that if you're concerned. And yeah, so of course your smoke cleansing and things like that works.
Even protection symbols, like there are symbols, even crosses or, pentagrams. There's things that you can place out that are just also, right? That's
repel. A great point. Yeah. What do we think about making like a pentagram, even out of sticks that you find outside, the same thing you're using for your ancestor or gratitude tree?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember what it was. Mirrors facing out windows. You want to, if even you go to the dollar store and you get those little tiny, $1 pocket mirrors, even one of those in the corner of a window or, the mirrored sun catchers, that will repel anything from coming into your home. But you want to clear the home first. So you don't trap anything in.
Right.
Because then they get agitated. You definitely don't want that to happen. It's not good news.
So you're putting like a little mirror on a windowsill, let's say, and making sure it's facing out of your house. Wow.
Yeah, facing out of your house.
Fascinating. I love this. Okay, so we've got the citrusy scents, which, could people do like an essential oil, like in a diffuser or something? Okay. Very cool.
Yep.
So we've got that, the talismans, the pentagram or the symbols. I'm already blank. The mirrors. And then I think you said one other thing, of course, smoke cleansing.
Yeah, and the salt.
The salt, of course. Yeah.
So putting your salt in your floor washes, your window, everything.
Wow.
Anything you wash with water, try to put some salt in it.
Oh, that is so cool. And then I think maybe just really quickly, how, apart from seeing something, apart from maybe getting a bad vibe or a strange vibe, like how else might you know that something's going on? You also mentioned the canned vegetable thing, but is there any other sort of signs or things that we can look out for?
Yeah. Things might, go missing and then suddenly turn up exactly where you knew that they were to start with.
Okay.
One of the things actually, when I first started opening up and understanding that this is what was going on was, you're doing something like, say you're standing and washing the dishes and your mind's off doing its own thing because it's mindless, right? Well, I remember on a few occasions I would hear, hi, mommy, or something to that effect. And I would turn around and my kids were nowhere in sight.
Whoa.
So sometimes when your guard is down, that's when you're going to hear things. And a lot of times we're like, oh, I'm hearing things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, not necessarily. There might be something trying to talk to you. And it's just when your rational mind is not there to argue it, you hear it.
Yes.
I'm thinking, as you're saying that, there's been a few moments, just little moments that I can remember where, like Jasmine, when you were saying, I see something out of the corner of my eye. That is certainly psychic, receptive. Like you're definitely seeing things. It's a form of being, psychic, your clairvoyance or whatever. But hearing that too. Yes. I've had moments where I've heard something and it's like, I swear someone just talked to me, and we just chalk it up to, we're just hearing stuff and it's crazy, but no, you actually are tuning in to the frequency. It's not of this material world.
Yeah. And it happens. I don't know. I find it happens more often this time of year.
Well, it makes sense if, we're talking about that veil being thinner, right? So.
Yeah. And I guess this would be also a good time to say there are specific crystals that tend to have a frequency that is better suited for protection. And so just a couple that come to mind, if we have a moment, is like selenite, which is in the salt family. So that's completely clears, you can just keep one on you under your pillow. It's just like that pure white light purification crystal. Obsidian is really good. So it's a strong protective stone and can shield. Clear quartz, of course, is like the master. It amplifies any energies of the other crystals. And so you can put it with some of these other more protective stones to make it even stronger. Even just smoky quartz is great as well. And then I'm drawing a blank. Tourmaline is also protective, psychically protective, and also energetically. And of course, if you have shungite can protect against all forms of energies, including like electromagnetic frequencies as well. But that tends to be protection. So, and there's many other stones. Those are just a few that I can think of. But
yeah, because I was thinking, I'm not
even labradorite too. I love labradorite.
I'm not super well versed in crystals, but I swear that I saw someplace selling a hematite ring. And that was meant to be like a kind of a protective thing, but maybe it was obsidian. It was black for sure. So,
well, it could have been hematite because hematite has a lot of magnetic properties, right? And so think about just energetically. Yeah, I would guess that you probably did see a hematite bracelet.
But. Yeah. I like hematite for like absorbing fear.
Okay. Maybe that's, yeah, that's probably totally why I saw it. Yeah.
On the salt note, you guys, along with the mirror, I will buy the chunks of the Himalayan salt. It's actually very inexpensive. Think about your salt lamps, and I will just set a couple of chunks of salt in my windowsills. And there's something about the way the sun hits the salt, and it, just like your salt lamp, and it kind of it purifies the air, the energies, kind of some ionic transfer there. But I will set some in windowsills, and this may not work if you live in a really humid area because it will weep and wilt all over your windowsill. But if you maybe something else you can add to just whatever, if you're in a room, I keep them next to me, next to my bed, but just, a little hunk of pink Himalayan salt.
I like
Very cool.
like that you're incorporating the sun with that too.
Yes.
Well, we do have a longer list of kind of foods and herbs and crystals that kind of correspond with Samhain, but we are running pretty long for a bonus episode, which I kind of felt like we were going to do anyway since it is Samhain, but maybe we'll put together like a little graphic or something that has all of these correspondences on it, because it seems like there's a lot of good ideas for your altars and, for foods that you might want to make during Samhain. So we'll put that together for you guys, and I don't know, either we'll put it on the Instagram or on our website or something like that. So that will be there for you, a nice little resource. But this has been so much fun. Is there anything we missed or anything that we want to wrap up with, or are we ready to go celebrate Samhain?
I've got my little witch hat on, and the broom is in the corner. So I'm gonna fly on over so we can get our big bonfire going. You ready?
Yes.
Oh, I'm ready. You'll bring the turnips for carving?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll let you guys do the carving. I'll drink wine.
No, I think I'll join you on the wine, and we can maybe watch Elena and Jesse do some carving.
Drink wine out of the turnip.
Hey, there we go. I think carving a cup could be pretty easy, right? You just scoop out the turnip insides, and there's your cup.
We're modernizing it.
I love it. All right.
Well, especially this year with the Samhain having our full moon, a little micro full moon, it's going to be extra magical. Yes. So if you happen to be listening to it in 2020, then make sure that you, look up and just.
It's a blue moon too, isn't it?
It is. It is a blue moon. It's a full moon. We have Mercury in retrograde opposing Uranus over in Taurus. It might be a little bit more trick than treat this year, just to give you guys that heads up in terms of like the astro weather, but be prepared, not scared, and you'll be fine.
Love it. All right. Everyone enjoy your Samhain for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Happy Samhain. Happy Halloween.
Yeah. And happy Halloween too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this bonus episode of the Tarot Coven cast. Stay tuned for our next bonus episode all about Yule and our next regularly scheduled episode where we'll be interviewing a very special guest. And until then, everyone, keep making magic.